What's up, guys? So I've been wanting to make this video for a while, just kind of explaining who I am and what it is that I do and why I started posting on social media and just kind of my journey with fitness through the last few years. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Luke Frierson, and I started an online fitness coaching business to help people get in better shape, achieve their dream physique, whether that be losing 20 pounds, putting on muscle, anything that has to do with physical health, fitness, personal development, all that stuff. That is what I have been trying to help people with. I have seen how much that can improve your life in more ways than just your physique. And so now I'm trying to help other people achieve that same goal that I did myself. And it improved my life, and now I'm trying to help other people improve theirs. And so for me, it all kind of got started my freshman year of high school when I was playing baseball. I'd been playing baseball my whole life. I was always on all-star teams, travel ball teams growing up ever since I was 4 years old. And I was pretty good. I wanted to play in the MLB, as most kids do that play baseball. And so that's what I wanted, and that was my biggest passion growing up. And when I became a freshman in high school, I was the smallest kid on the team. I was 5'2", 100 pounds, soaking wet, and we had a weight training class where all the kids on the baseball team were in 7th period weight training, and I was the smallest one there. I was the one kid that they had to take the plates off of the squat rack when it was my turn to squat because I was the weakest one and I had to do less weight than everyone. And it was super embarrassing. It was super embarrassing being the skinniest kid on the team and having the weakest arm, couldn't hit as hard as anyone else. And that resulted in me getting less playing time, which sucked because I thought I was pretty good. I was pretty good. So that's kind of where it all got started. That was my introduction to lifting weights. Didn't really love it at first. And that spring year of 2020 was when COVID hit and our freshman season got cut short. And so after COVID hit, I kind of just did nothing for a while. I was chilling at the house in quarantine, playing Fortnite, eating a bunch of food, doing pretty much nothing. So I got fat over that time period, and I had not put on any muscle yet. I still had never started really working out outside of the weight training with my team that I had to do, but that wasn't really putting on much muscle, especially because I wasn't eating outside of that. I didn't know how to eat properly at that point. So I got fat. During COVID, especially over my sophomore year of high school, I was doing online school because we were still in quarantine, and every day would consist of me waking up right at the time that my class started, hopping on Zoom, being half asleep during the whole class period and not paying attention, not really talking to any of my friends, and not doing any physical activity too often. So over that time period, I just ate like crap. I got out of shape. I had never put on any muscle up until that point, so I was still like skinny fat. As a 5'3" sophomore in high school, I was probably 140 pounds. And the next baseball season, I still didn't get any playing time, obviously, because I was out of shape. And, as you would expect, I was slow and I was still weak, so I couldn't hit hard once again. And that resulted in me riding the bench. And then, after that season, going into my junior year, I decided maybe I should do something about this because you can change it. You can always change this. So I enrolled in a weight training class with my buddy David, and I remember the first week of that class, the whole class did a 1 rep max on bench to kind of see where our starting points were. And mine, the first week of junior year as a 16-year-old, was 100 pounds on the dot. That was my bench max. That was my starting point. And throughout that class period was when I started to eat a little bit healthier. I learned about eating protein and, actually gained some muscle. But it wasn't like I was really learning how to train properly. Our weight training coach was my high school football defensive coordinator, and he didn't care about us because we weren't the football team. We were just kids that he had to teach so that he could be the coach of the high school team. Like, it wasn't actually his priority to get us jacked or anything like that. So we kind of just had free roam of the weight room. Didn't really learn much about training, just kind of got those newbie gains. And so I eventually was able to bench 185 pounds by the end of that school year, just from eating a little more and doing bench press, twice a week or whatever, among other exercises. But I got some muscle, and I became sort of like an average strength kid. And so that spring of my junior year, I still didn't get to play. Even though I had put on strength, I had put on size, I felt like I had deserved a shot at playing time by then. But, my coach, he already had these preconceived notions that I was, I had been riding the bench for the first 2 years, basically. And I was the tiny kid, even though I wasn't so tiny anymore. That really pissed me off. And honestly, I think that is why I kind of started to fall out of love with baseball. And so, going into my senior year, I started taking the gym even more seriously. I got a gym membership at the Workout Anytime near my house, and I started learning how to actually train, and I started, learning how to properly bulk, putting on some muscle. And so the New Year's Eve of 2022, which was on winter break of my senior year, that was the day that I bench pressed 225 pounds for the first time, and I felt like I was him. I felt like I had finally reached a point where I was above average strength compared to most of my friends. So that spring, I was 165 pounds, and I dieted down to like 145, 150, something like that. Just a little cut. And I had some muscle by then, so it was the first time that I had ever seen myself with abs, which was cool. I felt good about my physique that summer for the first time ever, and it was awesome. I felt like that was my peak physique, peak attractiveness, all that stuff. It was a great summer. And that summer, right when I was graduating, I started talking to this girl that was a junior at my school at the time, so she was a grade below me. And we hit it off. We ended up talking that whole summer, and then in August I was going off to college. I was going to the University of Georgia, which was 40 minutes away from the school that I went to, so 40 minutes from her. But we made it work anyways. We started dating right when I entered college, which is interesting time. And so I was rushing a frat, and I accepted a bid over the summer. So I was an acceptee. I was basically like in with the frat. I knew all the dudes, and I was planning on joining until school started, and we were about to have like pledgeship start, and I just decided I didn't think I could do it. I didn't think it was for me, and I dropped. And part of the reason was because of the money. Part of the reason was because I felt like I wouldn't have enough time to see my girlfriend. She lived 40 minutes away. And also because I felt like the whole lifestyle that they were doing, the drinking all the time, it wasn't conducive to my goals in fitness. But even after dropping, I still ended up getting involved with the going downtown, drinking every weekend, and I messed up all my progress anyways, basically, because I was doing balance, but it wasn't balance. It was actually not balance at all. It was just a cope for being super unhealthy, and eventually, I got fat. And I was still working out every day during this time period. That was something that would never leave me. I was always going to work out every single day because it was just who I was at that point. I loved the gym, but over that time, I was not disciplined at all. I was going to the gym, but I wasn't progressing. I wasn't eating healthy. I had the dining hall pass, so I would get free unlimited meals every single day, all you can eat. And so the freshman 15 was actually more like a freshman 30 for me. And, I continued to drink and get borderline blackout drunk every single Friday night. And especially during football season, if you know college football, you know that Georgia is one of the biggest programs. We were coming off a natty the year before. And, it's super deep in Athens on Saturdays. And so I would be tailgating, getting hammered at 11 in the morning, stuff like that. But after about a year of living like that, all the way into my sophomore year, Thanksgiving break of 2024, me and my girlfriend broke up after almost a year and a half of being together. And I took it really hard. It was rough. It has taken me a while to work through it. And at first, I was in a really dark place. I was still fat, still working out every day, obviously, but eating like crap, drinking, and just choosing the wrong ways to cope. A lot of people, when they go through a traumatic breakup like that, they want to sleep around, go out, have a one-night stand. That wasn't who I was, but I definitely didn't go about getting over it in the best way possible. And so this past winter was really rough for me. I actually buzzed my head. I did the whole thing, of course, as one does, because I always wanted to do it at some point, and that was the time to do it, clearly. So I was bald and fat, and I had really nothing going for me, because over that whole time that I was with her, and this wasn't her fault anyway, this wasn't her fault, by the way, she was amazing. I let myself get comfortable, and, I let myself kind of waste away a year of my life without really progressing towards anything. Obviously I was in school, I was working a job at Zaxby's over this time, and just kind of getting by, not working to build a successful life for myself whatsoever. January of this year, I felt like I was at a crossroads, and I could either sit around and feel bad for myself, feeling depressed, or I could work to improve. And luckily, I made the second choice. I chose the latter, and I really started working on my relationship with the Lord around this time. And at the end of January, me and my best friend Cody, we joined a small group together. And so this is kind of where I started to get picked up out of the darkness. The whole month of January and December was probably the worst 2 months of my life, mentally and physically. Super unhealthy in both regards. And once I started to get right with the Lord, things started to pick up from there. I started to focus on developing my mind, developing my physique again. I started another diet, because I was fed up with being a fat piece of shit, to put it bluntly. And I knew I needed to lose the weight. I knew I needed to elevate myself to a new level and figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And so to start, I joined a small group with my best friend, and I started reading my Bible every day, praying, listening to worship music, because I figured that was the only way to get out of this. And all glory to God, man. He got me through it. I handed my problems to him. I don't think I would be here without him. I definitely wouldn't be here without him. But that's when things started to get better. And over the next couple months, I was focusing on my diet, getting right with school, focusing on studying, focusing on just being a better person overall, right? And I'm still living in my apartment in Athens at this time, but the place I was living, I didn't feel I was in the greatest circumstances. It still was like a lot of alcohol everywhere, a lot of just kind of the same things that I had been living in, the same conditions I had been living in before. And I'm a big believer in the idea that you are a product of your environment. and I was in a bad environment. I was not in an environment that was conducive to becoming the person I wanted to be. And so at the end of February, I decided to move back home, which wasn't the biggest deal in the world because my house where I'm at now is only 20 minutes away from Athens. So I still was able to go and drive every morning to my classes and come home and be fine. But, you know, that decision was really big for me because I felt like I was no longer a part of the college environment. And that is when I started to feel like I didn't really know what I was going to do with my life. I kind of felt like I was a bum back home with my mom. I continued to focus on my physique, my personal development, my spiritual development, and at some point I was laying in that bed watching this guy's testimony on YouTube, and something that he said just hit me like a brick, and I started crying on the spot. I started bawling my eyes out right there watching that video. And for the first time ever, I felt God speak to me. It was surreal, you know. It was the first clear message that I had ever received from the Lord. And I had heard people talk about getting things like this before, but I had never experienced it myself. And it was incredible. And from that moment, I knew what I was here to do. I knew that I was sent here to help other people, to help them achieve their fitness goals just like I had, because I had seen how much that it changed my life, and I realized that that is what he sent me here to do, and that was my purpose in life. From that moment on, I felt like everything had changed, you know, and it was then that I decided I'm going to go all in. I'm going to give my life to Jesus Christ, and I'm going to commit and become the person that I wanted to be, you know, physically, mentally. And so I started posting on social media after that point and just trying to grow my brand, trying to build a name for myself so that eventually I could reach people and impact people in the ways that I had been impacted in the past. You know, I started to watch, you know, Higher Up Wellness and stuff like that. Just people that really inspired me to change my whole outlook on life, really. Change the way that I approached my daily life, change my systems, and improve my mindset overall. And so, ever since then, I've been super locked in with the Lord. I've been super locked in with my physical health, improving as a man in all ways that people should, you know. And that's why I've talked about this before, but I truly feel like I am unrecognizable from the person that I was this winter, on the outside and inside. You know, my whole outlook on life has changed. I've developed spiritually, mentally, and physically since that point. And I just feel like a much better person now. I mean, obviously, I'm not the best version of myself yet. I will never truly reach that point because I always want to be striving to improve. But I've become a better man now. And I realize that everything I went through was a blessing in disguise. And I knew this, you know, even from the beginning. I knew that God had a plan for me and that everything would eventually work itself out. It was not until now, you know, that I really realized why things happened the way that they did, specifically with losing the girl that I thought I was going to marry. But it led to me becoming the man I am today. And I realized how blessed I am to be in this position where I now get to help people achieve their goals. You know, I started training some of my friends. I started creating diet plans, workout plans, and just helping other people, you know, get to the same point where I did. And there is nothing more fulfilling than that. There's nothing more fulfilling than helping other people. And so that's what I want to do with my life. And that's kind of what's led me to be here, you know. And even with this YouTube video, kind of marks the start of my YouTube journey, because I'm going to be posting on here just so you guys can see who I am, because it's kind of hard to do that on Instagram when I'm just yelling at you talking about building discipline and stuff like that. But I am a real person, and I have been through real things, and I have real struggles, and I want you guys to see that. And so that's what I'm here to broadcast with my future YouTube videos that I will be posting. But that's basically it, you know? So here we are, and if you made it all the way here, I appreciate you so much, and I love you. If you enjoyed this video, and follow along for the ride, because it is only up from here, and I'm going to continue to be posting everywhere and building a name for myself so that I can impact as many people as possible, because that's what God has sent me here to do. And I'm really excited for this journey, man. Hopefully y'all are too. I guess that's it. You know, I'll be back here with more videos soon, but until then, I appreciate y'all for watching.